Hello and welcome to The Fifth Star, a podcast where we review movies in search of a 5-star movie.
Yep. And there are to find, but we keep looking, and when we find a movie that we both give that 5th star, then this podcast will end.
And today we're going to talk about Nyad. Oscar-winning movie, came out 2023 last year.
Did it win an Oscar?
Well, it got nominated like Best Actress and stuff.
Okay.
And I think Best Supporting Actress too.
It didn't win anything though?
I don't think it... I can't remember.
Yeah.
I don't think so.
Okay.
But I mean, that acting is pretty good.
Well, that might give me a clue as to what I think you gave it.
Oh, that's right.
So,
First of all,
we will write.
I will not flash the camera this time.
So that's my score. And do you want to guess first, or?
Yeah, I'm gonna play it safe.
Okay.
And I think you gave it a 3.5.
Okay.
You might have given it a 4, actually. You might have given it a 4.
Okay. So, I am going to guess you also give it a 3.5.
Copycat. Just kidding.
I mean, I'm also going to guess that you gave it a 3.5.
The movie really reminded me of Maiden
Yep.
documentary.
I was thinking the exact same thing.
Yeah. It's like women empowerment. For those of you who don't know, Maiden is a documentary about the first all women. What was their
So it
title?
was I don't know, they were sailors, I guess.
Sailors.
But it was a annual competition, or every few years they do a competition where sailboats have to sail around the world.
Yes.
And it's only been always all guys until this one year.
And nobody believed that an all-woman team could accomplish it, but
Yeah.
they did.
Let alone be competitive.
Yeah, they ended up like doing really well. So yeah, this movie was very reminiscent of that. I don't even know where to begin. I thought like the acting was really good. The nominations were well deserved.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they're already really great actresses. I thought the way that they paced the movie was pretty good. There were a couple moments where I was like, whoa, we just like time skipped in one shot. Really quick. And I kind of had to like catch up a little bit. So there were a couple moments like that where I felt like the pacing was a little strange.
Yeah. It was a very easy movie to follow and watch and just kind of go along with the ride, I felt like.
Yeah.
It was almost too perfect.
Yeah.
Like in terms of the structure and all that stuff. And I couldn't really put my finger on why I felt that way, but I think it has something to do with the fact that these two directors, Elizabeth Chai, I don't even want to attempt her last name, and then Jimmy Chin, they're a duo who they've done a bunch of documentaries together. And they've done Free Solo, Meru, like 2 climbing docs, which I've seen, and then The Rescue, which I think you've seen.
Oh, yeah.
And about the saving the Thai soccer team boys in the cave and stuff. And so this is their first time doing
A narrative?
A narrative, yeah. Which
Wow.
I think is
Incredible.
really impressive. Yeah. But another part of me also thinks maybe that's why it felt so by the book almost. Like this happens and then, like the setup and then like the pacing seems almost like exactly on time all the time. And then like the beats are almost exactly what you expect. But I actually found it unpredictable, which
it was not predictable to me.
which I really liked. It was kind of predictable until a certain point, and then when things we'll talk about spoilers later, but at a certain point I was kind of like, now I really don't know where this is going. And I love that about it.
Yeah.
I thought that was great.
Yeah, I loved the character scenes too. Like, even right at the beginning, you just get a sense for, like, their whole relationship and the way that they talk to each other, the two leads. And, yeah, like, I immediately knew, oh, they've been friends, like, forever.
Yeah.
They've been, like, best friends for so long. You get a sense for each of their individual characters as well. Like, she's really stubborn, but she, like, knows what she wants and she goes for it.
Yeah.
And, yeah, you just get a sense of that immediately. So
Yeah.
I thought that was, like, really well done. And I was drawn in because of that.
Yeah. I mean, the two characters are very different. Kind of similar to when we were talking about Booksmart. It's like they're besties, but
One's
very
controlling.
strong and domineering, and the other one kind of like follows along. But they had so much more depth in this, I felt like. They seemed like real people because they were also based on real people. Jodie Foster's character easily could have been just like a secondary kind of background character just there to support, Nyad and Annette Bening's character. But she really has her own arc too. She has her own kind of wants and desires. And, that's what leads to some of the tension that they have. And, so I agree. Like it was almost just as much about their friendship, and
It really was.
right, than just like Nyad's thing.
Yeah.
And I really loved that. And I like both of them. Annette Bening, she was just so good in American Beauty, and so this role seems to fit her perfectly. That kind of eccentric, like whatever, strong woman. And then Jodie Foster is just so lovable in this movie. She's so great. And I already love her, So I feel like I haven't seen her in a minute in like anything really big recently. And I grew up on a bunch of her movies like Contact and Panic Room and all these things and Silence of the Lambs. So
that's kind of a meta thing too, isn't it? Like these two actresses who were both famous, like
and they're
way back in the day.
Yeah.
Like, and then they kind of like fell off the, I don't know, Hollywood radar.
Yeah.
And now they're sort of back in it.
Yeah, they're trying to make a comeback in their old age, right? You're right. Oh my gosh.
I don't think anyone's forgotten them though. They're definitely not forgotten.
Yeah. I think Jodie Foster maybe more so might be forgotten at this point. I don't know, than Annette Bening. I feel like Annette Bening's still kind of been
around
things here and there. I don't know, but they are both older now. And, so when I was watching it, in the very, like, I didn't know anything about this, right? Like, I usually go in totally blind. But then the montage happens in the beginning, like credits. And I'm like, wait, isn't this like the whole movie? Like, she's already swimming around Manhattan and doing all these amazing things and swum from the Bahamas. And then, like, that's the opening credits.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, now they're old. So is this just a movie about them being old now? Like, what's going on here? So I didn't know that it was like her trying to make a comeback and everything. But then when the whole, like, she turned 60 and then now she gets like, I'm going to do this. Like, the premise was so good. I love the premise. It's like impossible. Something that when she was at the height of her career, at the peak of her physical prowess and all this stuff, she failed to do this thing.
Yeah.
At 28. At 61, like, she's going to do it now? Like,
I wouldn't believe it if it weren't based on a real story.
100%.
I would be like, this is ridiculous.
Yeah.
But like, because it's true.
Like, if
you're
this
just
was
baffled.
If the same exact movie was just written as a narrative,
I'd be like, no.
This is such a stupid movie. Yeah. That's so crazy how that happens. But yeah, so that premise was just so good. It sets such crazy stakes, and then it only gets even stronger as the movie unfolds.
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah.
Because I think as it unfolds, you start to understand more and more. Like, they didn't kind of give you all the exposition up front of like why this is such a difficult thing, why, like, this is different than swimming the English Channel. Like, they don't tell you that all like right up front. They kind of like unfold those pieces as you go along, and
which was really cool.
It just builds more and more like tension and anticipation.
Well, and going back to the whole like impossibility of the whole thing, I loved the scene where Jodie Foster's character basically says, "Oh yeah, these doctors say you can't do it, like it's impossible," and like all these professionals are telling you that this is a bad idea. And then she's like, well, now I want to do it even more. And
Yeah.
it turns out to be a complete lie.
Yeah.
Jodie Foster's lying just to get her to do it. And I thought that was really cool, too, because I believed her, too. I
Yeah.
was like, oh, yeah, the doctors would totally say she can't do it.
Yeah.
Shows how much I know.
Yeah. But it also, but legit, everybody would have thought that anyway.
Dude,
right?
She's a beast.
It's just insane. It's really insane.
Oh, she's so cool.
Yeah. And it really does show, like, again, even in that moment, like, their friendship, like, how well they know each other. Mm-hmm. She knows how to push the right buttons at the right time.
Yes.
Because she doesn't know anything about swimming, actual, like, how to coach a swimmer, you know, a marathon swimmer. But, like, she, being that close of a friend, that was the asset that she was able to, like, always get the best out of her.
Didn't she have some coaching in her background? I don't remember.
So it was, like, she was on racquetball or something like that.
Okay.
Yeah. But it wasn't like...
I missed that detail, yeah.
Yeah, but it had nothing to do with, like, swimming.
Okay.
So there a couple times she was like, I'm not even the right person. I don't know anything about swimming. And she's like, but, you know, but I need you. I can't do it without you, you know, kind of thing. And then another thing that I really loved was, like, how they showed the mental part of the sport. How, like, when she's in the water, she's just counting or singing a song. Or, like, even the hallucinations. Like, there were, like, two scenes that were hallucinations, and it definitely kind of comes out of nowhere, but it totally makes sense in the context of the movie. Mm-hmm. Doesn't feel out of place. If anything, it really enhances, like, like, how this is just you in your own head for hours and hours. Like, how insane that would be, you know?
And the use of, and actually this makes sense now that I know they're like documentarians, but their use of, like, her actual interviews from when she's young, like, voicing over what she's experiencing was really helpful, but also so creative. Because, like, throughout the whole movie, her interviews are kind of giving exposition and explaining, like, what she's going through in the water. Yeah. And that really helps set up the hallucinations and stuff. Yeah. Because she talks about that. Yeah, I thought that was just a really creative way to introduce information.
But it also, I think on top of that, the unfolding of, like, her previous failure was, like, timed up with, you know? So it was almost like, as they're giving you that backstory, it's also like she's having to get over her past failure and she's reliving that. It's starting to get to her head, you know, as she's getting tired. And so it works in that way too. So yeah, it was just so well done.
It was really cool.
And again, narrative directorial debut. I mean, that's really impressive.
It is. All right, you want to reveal?
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay,
so...
You first?
Sure. So, Jamie guessed I would give it a 3.5, and I gave it a 4.0.
Oh my gosh. Albert guessed I'd give it a 3.5, and I gave it a 4.0.
No! I was kind of thinking you might give it a 4.0 too. Man. I was kind of thinking... We
should have just done a 5. 5-5.
5-5 and just ended it. This is the last episode. Of all the movies, it was Nyad.
I mean, it was good.
It was good. Now, actually, I was at a 4.5.
Oh.
And then I dropped it to a 4.0.
I pretty much went to a 4 and never...
Oh, you just, like, stayed right there?
Yeah, I just stayed there.
So, I was curious because, like, for you, the likability of the main protagonist and stuff is very important. You know, you're kind of buying into them. But she is kind of a flawed person, right?
Oh, but she's so redeemed at the end.
She is, which is great. But, like...
You know I'm a sucker for redemption.
Okay. So, but during the journey, she's, like, so eccentric, so absorbed in her own destiny and, you know, all this kind of stuff that, you kind of have to be rooting for her and you have to be on board. And so I guess we'll start to get to spoilers now. Spoiler alert, right? Even to the point that she's pushing everyone away, right? Yeah. Like everyone else is jumping off the boat, you know, in a sense. But like for you, it wasn't? Like you were able to still keep tracking and keep rooting for her?
Well, I think what's cool is, so she had sort of an underdog story to begin with. because all the odds are stacked against her. She's this like 64-year-old woman who's doing this insane thing that no one's ever been able to accomplish before. And so that makes her kind of easy to root for.
Just the ambition in and of itself, I guess, is like so admirable.
Yeah.
Is that?
And she's so determined to do it that it feels very admirable. But then when things fall apart and she becomes more self-absorbed or you see more of that, you don't really like her in those moments, but I think you understand like why she's like that, because as the story's going on, you like learn about the assault from her childhood,
sexual abuse,
and then like her dad was a bad person, and like all this information is kind of like revealed as to like why she is the way that she is. And so then it becomes way easier to like be sympathetic to her plight.
Okay.
And then on top of that, at the end, she's just apologizing. She's not asking them to help her again, even though you know she really wants to.
Yeah.
She's holding back and not asking. And then when everybody like comes to her aid again at the end, it's like their choice.
Yeah.
They came back because they wanted to, not because
she didn't strong arm anybody.
Yeah, she didn't manipulate them.
Yeah.
So.
Okay.
It worked.
Yeah. I mean, I rooted for her because, I mean, you know this, I'm just a sucker for people following their dream, movies.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Like, so any story about someone who's going to follow an impossible dream or a dream, like, I'm already rooting for them, even if they're likable, not likable, whatever. But I thought another great thing was that, well, apparently this is the way she really is in real life. But, like, the fact that it made sense that for someone at 60 to think they could still do this, it must take a certain amount of insane, eccentric, egotistical, like something in you that has to be like that for you to really convince yourself that you could do this, right?
Yeah.
Like any normal, sane person, like even her best friend, is like, no, you're joking. Like, that's not possible, right?
Yeah.
So in that sense, it kind of made sense, like, for someone to do something that insane, they have to be a little insane.
Yeah.
And so it was almost like, well, if we're going to root for her and to be inspired by her, like, you kind of have to take the baggage with it, it almost felt like. And that's almost like the way I feel like Jodie Foster's character is. Like, she's like, I love her, but I know this is just who she is. Like, I just have to take her as a whole package.
Yeah.
You can't pick and choose your flaws in your best friends. Because whenever you see her getting ridiculous, like Jodie Foster's the one that gives voice to how we're feeling. If like, you're being selfish right now, and like kind of like puts her in her place a little bit. So I think it did a good job of like, letting us know, like, we know that she's being kind of crazy. She even knows at some points, she acknowledges it. And so, like when she calls the navigator and kind of like, apologizes, like that was like a really nice moment, right?
Yeah.
She kind of acknowledged, she's like, yeah, it's like, so why does it have to be so hard to be like just a nice person, And so I thought, yeah, like that was really good. And I think one of the best things about this movie was like how often she fails. Because I thought,
oh yeah,
the way it was being built up, it was like, oh, the first time she might.
And I even thought like the third time she's gonna do it, like three rule of threes.
Yeah.
And then she failed again, and I was like, what is she? Are we gonna go the whole movie with her not doing it?
Yeah.
Like, that's what I was starting to think.
It was so much so that even on the last swim, when she's like sees the shore, right, and then. She's just like literally like floating and flopping around and can't go. And Jodie Foster needs to jump in and stuff like that.
That was a good moment.
That was a really good moment. That I really, even in that moment, was like, I don't know. She might fail that close.
That'd be horrible.
That would be horrible. But like, to me, it was that I really appreciated how unpredictable they made it. Where
the tension.
Yeah. And not enough movies do this, I feel like, where they have this great obstacle, impossible odds and goal that they have to pursue. And then they try so much and keep failing, and they need to keep working through it. You know, like a lot of times, like one, and like you said, like rule of three, two at the three at the most, and then they're like, okay, then they're on their way, you know? But this was like, I mean, it took her 4 times in her 60s, which is insane.
Yeah.
So, and different ways of like, it was the storm and
the jellyfish. Oh, the jellyfish was really, that was like difficult to watch. It's like, oh, I can't imagine.
Yeah. And and if she got stung again, she would have died.
Yeah.
But she went back in.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
So wait, you were going to say it was at a 4.5 and then you lowered it. You never finished that.
Okay. So one thing, there's a few reasons, but one thing was something in the movie itself. So it was great. All the beats of like her selfishness ended up driving her, but also pushing away all her supporters. And then she like apologizes to the navigator, and then like she shows up at the house after being ghosted by her best friend. But the one thing that kind of bugged me was she never actually said I'm sorry to Jodie Foster. She just kind of like shows up, and then he's like, you know, starts talking, and then she's like, you know, I just have to do this, and like she doesn't ask for help. That was her way of letting her go. But she never actually apologizes. And then it kind of bugged me that Jodie Foster's the one that came back to her. And I don't know. I mean, I already love Jodie Foster's character, but I felt like Nyad needed a little bit more, like of...
I don't think I even realized she didn't apologize.
Yeah, because I was kind of like waiting for that moment, that kind of like resolution, and that like, I'm so sorry. Like I took you for granted or something, you know, that could have really like made her humble herself, you know, and show that kind of growth, you know, whatever.
You're probably right about her like needing to apologize. For some reason, I thought she did. It's almost like the apology was implied, and so my memory is sort of just making it up.
But I will say the movie does kind of redeem that by showing enough that she really did grow. Yeah. Like when she gets saved by the shark, she does come out of the water saying, thank you, everyone, you know, like, thanks to team. And then when she comes out of the water, like in
at the victory, end,
she says, we did it.
Yeah.
Like those were the first.
She can't do it without her team.
I did feel like she got there and she grew. So I appreciated that. But yeah, so that was one kind of thing. But another thing, so after I finished the movie, I was at like a 4.5. And then I started like reading up on the true story.
Oh no.
Yes.
You change your rating because that's lame.
Because this is why.
Lame.
This is why. I was like,
that's not how you rate. No.
I know it goes against the way I normally rate.
That is not how you rate.
But because I was set on like, man, this movie is even a potential 5.0 for me. Like,
oh wow.
I mean, I was like, I have a daughter, you know, and like, so I'm a sucker for these kinds of like woman empowerment, whatever. I want to show these movies to my daughter when she gets older, and you know, show her like, hey, look at what this woman did, you know, like how amazing it is and all this stuff. But then after reading up on some of this stuff, like now I'm kind of like,
what happened?
So one thing is that she was not the first person, not even the first woman, to swim across from Cuba to the Bahamas. To Florida.
Are you serious?
Yes. Now, there's a caveat because, and the movie does kind of mention it, but it's not very clear because you don't really understand the way the sport works, like I didn't. There was a man in like the 70s who did it, and then in 1997... the guy in the 70s who did it, he got off onto a escort thing to rest briefly a few times. So I understand like you would throw that one out, right? Mm-hmm. Like her big thing was like, you don't touch me and I can't get on the boat. Yeah. So fair. In 1997, at age 22, a woman became the first woman to swim from Cuba to Florida, but she did it with the shark cage, which is the way that Nyad had originally attempted to do it. Mm-hmm. So in 97, someone actually did accomplish that. So in my mind, it's like, well, someone already did accomplish it. So That's why she insisted in real life not doing it with the shark cage. It wasn't because she didn't like the shark cage. It's because that was considered like an assisted swim in a way because it gives like protection. So she found a different way to protect from sharks that wouldn't require a shark cage. So that she could say, I did an unassisted swim, the first person to do an unassisted. But then, like they're using more advanced technology, like the electric,
Didn't get rid of the jellyfish, though.
But then what ended up happening was, so she succeeds, right? She gets into the Guinness World Record and all this stuff. And then at the time, there was like a very loose organization, like Open Water Swimming Association. Everything was very informal, but they would try to get it like recognized, her feat and ratified and stuff, but they failed to get it like officially approved. And it was because like there were a few reasons, like for example, they had like these observer logs, and there was 9 hours of an undocumented gap. 9 hours out of like the 56 it took or whatever. And there also calls into question, like there was when they track, because they know what time she left, what time she got there, and they know the weather and all this stuff. So apparently she went a little faster you might expect.
Right.
And there's like a 9 hour
she was
undocumented.
With the current.
So that's the question. It's like she could have got on the boat and they could have took her faster, to cover up a lot of ground or whatever. Or like the guy, he actually did die soon after, the navigator. And before he died, he did say it was because of the current. It kind of worked in their favor. And so they went through apparently all this paperwork, and it took a few decades of like them not giving the right documentation, potentially even falsifying. There were some
decades. This only happened 1 decade ago. 2013.
Was it 2013?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, it said nearly a decade of delay in providing documentation to seek formal ratification. Dubious claims about the rules followed for the swim and backdated and falsified documentation. And the crew, apparently they had conflicting reports in the witness accounts or whatever, as they tried to like get witnesses to verify like she really did the whole thing. Now, there's also so recently apparently what she's done is she said, okay, you know what? I'm willing to take away the unassisted part, just recognize it as a assisted swim, so that it's at least like officially logged. And apparently part of it is like because she had to put on a suit and stuff, which you wouldn't have to do if you had the cage, like because she couldn't like fully zip the final thing up, like someone had to like touch her and like pull it up. And like that's considered potentially touching, and but the thing is, in her defense, all this stuff was like very like it was a very niche sport. There was no real oversight. There was no real formal official whatever. Mm-hmm. So these athletes just kind of did according to what they thought was the right way to do it. Because of all this controversy, Guinness World Records removed her thing from their record.
Well, that's sad.
That is sad. But at the end of the day, I believe her because she's like someone who did it when she was 60. She tried at 61, she failed. She tried at 62, she failed. 63, she failed. Like if she was like wanting to cheat and do it,
why didn't she cheat before?
Exactly. Why didn't she just cheat the first or second time, So the fact that she tried that many times and then finally succeeded and then stopped.
Yeah.
Like I think if she cheated,
she
knowing everything about her character, she wouldn't have just stopped there, right?
Yeah. That doesn't change my rating at all.
It doesn't?
No. That's so like tiny details. I mean, the only annoying thing is like the fact that someone else did actually swim it, because I thought in the movie they mentioned that no one else had done it. But maybe I just missed the detail.
I think what they'd say is unassisted. They kind of throw that in there.
Well, that shouldn't change your review.
It's a
movie.
And the whole other part of this, it actually ties in with the character. She's a very polarizing figure because like apparently she has a pattern of like embellishment and all this. Like they kind of show you in the movie how she likes the attention. She stands up there and kind of orates and tells these like war stories and stuff. And so apparently that's kind of like what she's known for in the community. And I think like because of that, it kind of kills the movie for me. You know, it's like it's the movie that like honestly this is a movie that like I want to watch when I turn 60 and be like, and I think I still would be inspired by it.
Yeah.
But just knowing that like she's kind of a shady character and controversial.
Every human is shady. Every human is controversial. I don't think it's fair.
But integrity. If you're gonna do something that insane. See, my pen agrees with me.
Impressive. No, I completely disagree. I completely disagree. I feel like the movie holds up as what it is. It's a narrative that took creative license and creative liberties to tell a story, and we don't have to... I don't know. I don't think it's necessary because it's not a documentary. If it was a documentary, I'd be more upset. But it's a narrative film inspired by true events, and you gotta judge it by that and not judge it by actual events. Because every movie based on true events is not accurate. Okay. You should change your rating of I, Tonya.
Okay,
then.
That's...
Because I, Tonya
is
also based off of true events.
But I, Tonya was... Basically, the whole event was itself controversial, and they addressed it head on. It was two people telling their different sides. Wrong. But this, they totally ignored all of it. Which is...
No,
they ignored the whole controversy, which is fair. I totally think that's the right call.
What, the post-controversy? Yeah. Well, that's not what the movie was trying to talk about.
So I agree with that. I agree with that choice, but in that sense, it's different than I, Tonya.
The movie, they could have done an Oppenheimer and just had a whole court thing at the third act, and that would have been so annoying, and we would have hated it.
Yes, we would have hated it. And
like, that is not the point of the movie.
Yes, I 100% agree. I will then say the fact that she did not say I'm sorry still keeps it from being a 4.5. Okay, fine.
That's fair. I'll let you have that.
But then my question is, after all the things that you said, why is it not a 4.5 for you? I've not heard anything negative from...
That's fair. I mean, for me, when I give something a 4, it's like there are very few negatives. I don't think I'll rewatch it.
Oh.
That's huge. So the rewatchability is not high for me.
Is it because it would feel too grueling? Almost like you're doing this to
It's one of those things where it's like once you know the ending, you don't really need to see the journey again. Because it's... For me, survival movies are all just... Or survival/sport movies are all just about like that final accomplishment. Mm-hmm. And so the journey isn't as interesting as that, like, final act.
Because, like, the journey wasn't fun in and of itself, in a sense, that you would watch it just to go along with.
Yeah, kind of. And so for me, like, knowing the ending, it's just not as rewatchable. So that already kind of brings it down a bit.
Okay.
And then the other thing that maybe sort of brought it down a bit for me was... kind of similar to your thing, except not the apology, but I kind of wanted them to have more of a fight, the two main characters, or maybe a longer fight, because I felt like it was really quick.
You're right. I agree with that.
Super fast. They have a fight, then they stop talking, and then they meet again and they resolve it, which, like, I think that's realistic, but as far as, like, the pacing of the movie, I kind of wanted that to be a little more stretched out.
Or, like, let her actually try a full swim and fail disastrously.
But that's not how it actually happened.
Yeah, that's true.
So that'd be changing.
Hey, creative license!
Anyway.
It's not a documentary.
And then the other small thing, the whole sexual assault thing, I almost wanted it to either be tied in more to the story... Because for me, there was a bit of a disconnect there where I sort of wasn't sure what the filmmakers were trying to say when they kept, like, showing those scenes, like, while she was swimming. I was like, are they trying to say that, like, that's what she's thinking about while she's swimming? Because, like, Annette Benning doesn't really address it at all until that one scene
Where she says, I don't like to be a victim.
where she doesn't like to be a victim, and then it's like dropped, kind of. And it sort of felt like it's a traumatic event that's very shaping for who she is, but it also felt like, oh, that's so far in the past.
I actually, the way I interpreted it was that was her ultimate final demon that she had to get over. Like, she initially struggles with her past failure of her past swim, but then that kind of, she works through that after she gets through the first swim, and then like she fails, and then like in the second swim it's the box jellyfish. But I actually have it written down, like when she gets attacked is actually timed up with the vision and flashbacks of her sexual assault. That's like the first time it's kind of like revealed that she's like, oh, she was like assaulted, like abused. And and then like it really does keep coming back on her future swims, and it's not until she finally says it out into the real world to Jodie Foster's character that she's able to finally put that demon to rest. And so this whole like sport itself is less of a, I mean, obviously it's physically daunting and stuff, but even in an interview I heard her talk about, it's really like your mind. You're battling your mind. And it's so much so that the reason why she failed when she was younger almost seems like it's more because she wasn't ready yet at that time mentally.
She wasn't past it.
Yeah. And like, so she only could have accomplished this at this time because it took her this long in her life to fully really process it and somehow work through it in a way that you never really worked through. It's not like she moved on and she's like, so yeah, it affected her, but it also was like, she's like, it's not like it changed the course of my life, but it obviously was traumatizing and it left a huge impact on her mentally and psychologically and all this stuff. So to me, I thought it was actually very integrally tied. And to me, it made this movie it elevated it a little more to even be more important than just a feel-good inspiration kind of movie, because this whole thing about females in sports, it's such a big issue. It's kind of come up over the last few years, and me having a daughter makes me concerned, like, of her advancing in sports. I don't know if that she's going to get there, but it's such an important topic, and I thought it did it really well, like not so in your face, but it also was like in a way that it was connected to a real person. So yeah, to me, that's the way I interpret it.
No, I think you're right.
Yeah.
I think I just wasn't connecting the pieces.
Like in the moment. It
seems
almost like an extra thing.
It wasn't clear for me if like she was thinking about that while she was swimming, or if we were just as an audience being told what happened. Because there were moments where it flashed to those scenes and I was kind of like, oh, the director is trying to make like a artistic choice, and I couldn't tell if it sort of took me out of it a little bit, because I couldn't tell if that's what she was thinking about or not,
or if it was just exposition or something.
Yes. Yeah. It felt almost like just exposition thrown in.
Yeah.
I wish that, I don't know how you could have done it better.
Yeah.
Or even like when she's like shouting things in the water and sort of hallucinating, she could have said something maybe
like, get off me, or something like that. And she's
just
like, what is
like, to like anchor it more, like, oh, this is what she's thinking about right now, because I personally wasn't sure.
Connect the visuals with the character
a little bit
in that moment. That makes sense. Yeah, I think that would have been stronger. Okay, well, you know what? Maybe for the first time ever, you convinced me.
Are you serious?
I did initially give it a 4.5. And I think you...
Oh my gosh. I've never convinced him to change his score.
Final answer. I think you're right. I need to let this exist on its own as a narrative film. It's not a documentary, even though it's very closely, everything is very accurate.
You're gonna let the apology thing go?
I think so. I think her growth is sufficient and satisfying.
That's why it's not a 5.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, we got close. We got close to a 5th star.
This is maybe the closest we've gone so far. Yeah.
Yeah, it is.
Well, yeah. All I mean, we'll see. Let us know what you guys thought about the movie, and Hopefully you enjoyed this breakdown. But yeah, where can they follow us? And
Letterboxd.
oh yeah, so follow us on Letterboxd.
Yep.
Yeah, and follow and subscribe on YouTube and Spotify.
Yes.
All right.